Pick a number between 1 and 12.
8.
8. Pick a number between 13 and 24.
17.
Okay. Pick a number between 24 and 36.
31.
Pick a number between 36 and 48.
39. It's funny that I have to think about that. I'm thinking, well, like, what's the best number here?
Yeah, no,
I have to pause for a second. Make
well,
a
yeah,
wise
no, you should
decision.
think about it. This is the most important part of our time together right here. Well, I want to welcome everyone to Rev Reads. I am thrilled to have Joel Berry here with us, who is nothing but a highfalutin, yellow belly Italian juggalo. And we are going to be talking about the Babylon Bee Guide to Democracy, your way to flawlessly rig elections, bribe any politician, and crush your political enemies for good by throwing mud at them in the most creative way possible. So that insult on Joe came from page 148 in his book on how to sling some mud at your political opponents. That was I think my favorite 2 pages of the book were on that mud generator because it brought me to the lying dog-faced pony soldier boy line from Biden that I had never heard of. How did I miss that?
Yeah, you didn't know that was a thing before you read our book, right?
Yeah, no, I totally missed it.
The Babylon Bee, we're still breaking news to people. I love it.
No, because, well, all I was thinking when I was watching that clip from Biden was that if Trump had said that, would you not have had women showing up at his next political rally with dog masks on, being like, Trump thinks that we're lying dog-faced ponies?
Oh, yeah. That's an insult even the bee couldn't have made up, I don't think. It's so out there. I don't even know if people still to this day know like what is in reference to, like,
Well, it's so out there that if you want to repeat it, I feel like you need to be looking at it written down because it's so unnatural to say lion dog-faced pony soldier. I even practiced it so I wouldn't need to look at it, and I still needed to look at it again. Crazy.
Yeah, that's our political process these days.
So I finished reading The Guide to Democracy. I found the book to be hilarious at times, insightful at other times, sadly convicting, because of the way that I talk about politics sometimes with some people. Yeah. And we're going to talk to Joel a little bit about the book. And I want to start off, since you wrote, along with Kyle and whoever else at the Bee, you wrote The Guide to Democracy. So the question I think we should start off with is, what is democracy?
Yeah, that's kind of the central joke of the book, because especially now, I think the timing of it coming out is really good, because we hear that word democracy being thrown around an awful lot, and usually with a lot of seriousness and like sanctimony, and like we have to defend our democracy. You hear it said in that context by people who I don't think really know what they're talking about, know what democracy even is. I think most people generically think of democracy as like rule by the people, freedom, liberty, things like that. I think when most politicians are talking about democracy, they're talking about the system that they are fiercely defending, the system that keeps them in power and keeps them enriched. I think in the book we kind of play with it as this almost like this religious idea that one day George Washington was praying in the woods, and an eagle came down from heaven and handed him these golden plates with the word democracy written on it, and it's God's chosen form of government. We kind of play with a little bit with like the Christian nationalism and the overall gravity and self-seriousness that word is often used by people who don't really know what it means.
Well, yeah, which is funny because we live in a constitutional republic. We don't technically live in a democracy. Yeah. And I thought the book was just going to be making fun of the current election coming up. Like just this one voting time. Because like democracy is that one time you come together for voting, but it's really about the whole system, every part about it.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I keep wrestling with, and I don't know if you have any insight of thought about it all, but why do you think democracy is now the catch-all word for the entire government system? Like, why go with that term?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a useful word. I think it's one of those words that people still have generally good thoughts towards. And if there's one thing we learned from the whole kind of the woke movement, the Babylon Bee Guide to Wokeness from last year, is that the left is good at capturing words for their own benefit. So if there's a word out there that people generally accept as good, the left can kind of they can redefine that word and use it to their own ends, while kind of keeping the rest of the public in the dark about what they mean by democracy. So I think there's a little bit of that going around. And I think the other thing too is that the left, ideologically speaking, they want mob rule. I mean, that's what we call democracy. It's they want a tyranny of the majority because, technically speaking, if everything was put to a popular vote, the left would win pretty much everything. They have more people in the cities. They have the city machine that can get out votes and bus people to polls and things like that. And so they have the numbers. And one of the points that we make in the book is that, our entire system was set up to protect people from that, because when you have, then essentially you have, 51% of the people acting as tyrants over the other 49%. We got when in our chapter we talk about the origin of democracy, and we take it back, millions and millions of years, or 6,000 years, depending on your view of the age of the earth, I guess. But the first democracy was when two single-celled organisms were swimming through the primordial soup, and they came upon a lone single-celled organism, and they ganged up on it and ate it. So it was 2-on-1. And that was the first functional democracy. The will of the people was decided based on a 2-to-1 vote, and that's what democracy is. It's might makes right. So pure democracy is a very bad thing.
It's terrible. No, John Adams wrote a lot about that. And
yeah.
No, and that you had one of my other favorite jokes in that part when you had two people on one side, one guy and another, and the two people were like, let's take that guy's money. And he's like, I don't like this. And then with democracy, they're like, oh, let's vote to take his money. And then when they're taking his money, he's like, well, at least I voted on them taking my money, so it's all good now because it's democracy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the story of the Good Samaritan, when the guy was waylaid by the band of robbers. I mean, technically he was outnumbered. So I mean, that was a fair vote, and he lost. So
it's too bad for him.
Yeah.
And then when they talk about democracy today in the left, typically they're talking about threats to democracy or defending democracy. Those are, the two buzzwords that are brought with it. Do you think there are legitimate threats to our political system that we have today? And if so, what do you think some of those big threats might be that are legitimate?
Yeah, I think the biggest threat right now is our lack of education. I think our younger generation isn't being educated on how our system works, how it's supposed to work. And I think that's been the case for a while now. And that's why I think you're starting to see this slow erosion of how things are supposed to work. And that's one of my favorite quotes from old Uncle Reagan was that democracy is never more, or that freedom is never more than a generation away from extinction. We don't pass it down to our children in the bloodstream. It must be taught, it must be fought for, and done again and again with each generation, or we'll lose it. And so I think probably our education or lack thereof is the biggest threat. And I also think probably the other threat just is a bit of a spiritual bankruptcy that we have in our country right now, that I think our leaders, the people that we have tasked with defending our freedoms and our liberties, I think they have failed at their responsibility, whether through cowardice or apathy, or ignorance, or selfishness or corruption, or a combination of all those things. I think our elites, our leaders, the people that we entrust this whole thing with, have largely failed. And I think that's part of what led to Trump. Was it was this kind of this desperate attempt to just throw something at this mess in hopes that something would work. Um, but I think it remains to be seen. I think really that if you ask me, the only way out of this is spiritual revival. I don't know if there is another way out. I think it's not going to come from the top down. Our institutions have failed us. I think that it's going to have to be a huge groundswell, a miraculous one that starts with a spiritual renewal and revival, and then kind of trickles up into our institutions and universities and systems and government. I don't see any other way of reversing it, honestly.
No, I think you're right about the need for spiritual renewal. The sad part is the way spiritual renewal works is we're probably going to need to get farther bankrupt before people realize how empty things are. And so we're probably on this downward trajectory, and we're probably about halfway there, where they're going to go, where they realize, oh no, we've destroyed everything.
Sometimes I think September 11th was maybe kind of God's little nudge. We had a giant recession in 2008. I think maybe God nudging us a little more. And and we're still not listening. And the next thing is going to have to be a little worry. He'll keep pushing us until we start listening. As we know from history, we know how he dealt with the Israelites. Not that we're God's chosen people here in America, but that's another chapter in the book. I guess.
Yeah, he dealt with a lot of other nations around that same time too.
Yeah.
So it's not just Israel. No, the political process though has really sort of gotten crazy over the last probably 5 or 6 years, especially. It's just been insane. And your book that's what your book's doing, is it's pointing out the insanity of the way that things are today. Things like how the biggest reason you vote, I feel like today, is so that you have a right to complain. And if you don't vote, it means you don't get to complain. You just have to, suck it up and take it. And then also things about how making fun of how the fact that the one part of our government, the one branch of our government that was put in to legislate and make laws, is the one part of our government that isn't legislating. We're legislating by the executive branch, we're legislating by the judicial branch, and the legislative branch is just doing nothing. And then also the outsized influence of corporations on our government is just becoming insane. So do you think there's a spot that you guys make fun of in the insanity of our government that you think is maybe kind of the craziest or most insane parts of our political system today?
Oh man. Well, I guess you said it well. So we have a legislature that has given up its responsibility to legislate. So you have the executive and the judicial now doing legislation, and you kind of have this corporate branch. So we have this chapter, for the fourth branch of government called the corporate branch. That is almost now the new executive branch. So we have the government kind of forcing its will on the people by means of bureaucracy working through corporations, without any voter input or congressional input whatsoever. So it is a bit of a mess. I think I had a lot of fun talking about this quote unquote corporate branch. I think it was I think it's kind of a new problem that conservatives especially are thinking about. We've always, I think, pretty generally had this idea that corporations, they're private entities, they should be able to do what they want. It's a free country, and this, I think, this outsized faith in like capitalism, that capitalism will automatically kind of lift up the most virtuous people and the most virtuous companies, because the idea being that if a company is well run by virtuous people and they're doing the right things, then they're going to be more economically successful. They're going to have more customers and things like that. And I think as our culture has become more corrupt, our capitalism has become more corrupt as well. And so I think a lot of conservatives are having to kind of reevaluate how we think about these massive companies that have so much power over our everyday lives. And I think the thing that really made it such an important thing for us to write about in the book was just the Babylon Bee has been we've been like fighting that battle against, I mean, our livelihood, and we're not the only ones. I mean, there are thousands of people that have had their livelihoods wiped out by big tech, whether it be through censorship or being squashed in the algorithm, things like that. And the government, as we saw with Facebook a few weeks ago, the government seems to be exercising its power over these private companies and pressuring them to deplatform people, silence people, silence stories and things like that. So I think it's something it's important for us to be thinking about that. It's not just government power. Anytime you kind of have centralized, unchecked, unaccountable centers of power, whether that be in the government or the quote unquote private sector, that's something to be skeptical of, I guess. And as far as the other three branches of government, I like, it's just the comedy kind of writes itself. I mean, Congress is so hilariously corrupt, I think. It's like, we see it. I mean, we see it every day. I mean, our representatives their full-time job is reelection. That's all they're doing.
Oh yeah, totally.
Our executive branch, our president is not all there. He's absent. A lot of kind of how we looked at what the whole Washington system was a bit inspired by P.J. O'Rourke. So, the famous political writer, he wrote a book explaining Washington called Parliament of Horrors, which is a very colorful title. But he wrote that decades ago and saw a lot of the same things that we're seeing today. I think not a lot has changed. It's just kind of everything's gotten a little bit worse. Everything's gotten a little bit more. We've gone down the slope a little bit more. So yeah, which is we're this book is kind of like PJ O'Rourke with more pictures of stick figures punching each other, I think.
Which is what the world needs, is more pictures.
That's right. Gen Z needs pictures.
Yeah. No, we do. You talked about the how you guys have been censored and on the front lines of that. Are you guys still off of Twitter right now? The B, is it you guys still?
Yeah, so we're still locked out of Twitter.
Can you remind, if anybody doesn't know who's watching it, can you remind us of why it is that you guys aren't on there today?
Yeah, so earlier this year, Rachel Levine, who is the assistant HHS secretary for the Biden administration, he's a biological man who identifies as a woman, and USA Today had named Rachel Levine their Woman of the Year. Which is just funny. I just,
oh yeah, no,
the world is funny. Woman of the Year, Rachel Levine. And so the Babylon. This is more of maybe a troll headline than a joke, but we decided to respond by creating our own award, and we awarded Rachel Levine our Man of the Year. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine, and so we tweeted that out. I'm guessing it got mass reported by somebody, and Twitter took the tweet down, locked us out of our account, and basically how it works with Twitter. I mean, we still have our Twitter account. We can't tweet anything though. So we can get back on if we check this little box admitting that we engaged in hate speech or hateful conduct.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like where Seth Dillon, our owner, said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to, we're not going to lie or admit that we did something wrong just so that we can tweet on Twitter. The truth is more important. And so we kind of decided to take that stand, and we're off of Twitter until the policy changes, I guess.
How often are you guys dealing with censorship? Is this like every week you have articles that you feel like are, getting shadow banned or kicked off various platforms? Or
Oh yeah. Almost all our videos on YouTube and Facebook get demonetized. We got kicked off of TikTok a few weeks ago, which I don't know if that's a.
Oh, I didn't even hear about that. TikTok is so off my radar.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a.
Yeah, we had a TikTok channel, somewhat successful, and just we got a notice like you're banned from TikTok. No reason why. No specific thing that we violated, just like you're suspended. That's it.
So you don't,
And
there's no, you don't, not even sure what video would have
no,
pushed
they
TikTok over the edge.
no
Man, that's
specific.
insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's a China. I mean, it's probably better that we're off it, honestly. I mean, it's owned by the Chinese Communist Party, and it's basically spyware. So, probably better that we're off of it. But Facebook, Facebook used to come at us more directly through fact checks. So it used to be that when Snopes would fact check an article, Facebook would take it down and give us a warning that we're going to remove your page if you keep, and we made fun of Snopes so much that they eventually backed off of that. But what they ended up doing was they started a program, a fact check program with all these trusted news sources, USA Today, Newsweek, and things like that. And it basically, these fact checks get invisibly fed back into their algorithm. So every time we get a fact check against us, it just kind of bumps us down in the algorithm a little more, and we get a few of these coming at us a month. Random articles, B articles that are getting fact checked, like did Trump really propose putting a space navy on the moon? Did a 2-year-old really get kicked off of U.S. Airlines for not saying Black Lives Matter? Like it's funny, we laugh at the fact checks, but it is really hurting our traffic with Facebook, and it's all invisible. You can't see the algorithm. It's not open source, so nothing you can approve because there's no accountability.
Do you have you guys calculated at all, or have you heard anybody have a discussion on what being demonetized from YouTube or something like that would cost the Bee? Because I would assume you guys would generate enough views that it would be a significant stream of income. Have you guys ever discussed internally what that would cost you guys financially for
like if we
guys demonetized?
Yeah, I mean, we have for a long time really tried to treat any kind of income we get from these platforms as like, this is just extra bonus. We're not counting on any of this at all. The core of our revenue comes from our subscribers. So, I think when Adam Ford first started this, 6 years ago, a year in, he kind of saw the writing on the wall. Like he almost wanted to get out of it because he was like, it's only a matter of time. I'm going to build this thing. It's going to be going great. And then
they're going to shut it down.
They're going to shut everything down, and I'm going to lose it all. So I'm going to kind of get out now while the getting's good. And, I think so we've always had that mindset that, let's just assume that eventually this is all going away. And let's start really focusing on getting our content directly to our fans and our subscribers. So we have our email list. A lot of people consume our content through our email list and then just organically. It used to be that like 93% of our traffic comes from Facebook. Now it's closer to like 20 something percent.
Really? It's down to 20% from Facebook. That's crazy.
Yeah. And now I think the majority of our traffic is organic, just people, typing in our name into the URL. What's amazing and really kind of a God's grace, for all of us here at the Bee is that our traffic hasn't suffered. We still have a steady stream of traffic coming to the site. Which is wonderful. People are just kind of going around the social media platforms now. So,
I saw a headline that you guys are now more people consume the Bee than the Onion. So that you guys are now the top of the satire mountain.
We are, yeah. Well, for the time being, until someone else takes us over, we'll see.
So back to the guide to democracy on hand, as far as instead of just the Bee in general. So people who are going to be buying this book, obviously they're going to expect you guys to be coming from a Christian, what they would view as a right-wing perspective, maybe conservative. Is this just going to be mocking the left then? Or are you going to be going both sides of the aisle on this book?
No, I think even much more so than our last book. This book kind of points its cannons in all directions, I think. And I think a lot of it was really us just preaching to ourselves too. I think, so in the book, we go after the left, we go after the right, we go after the middle and libertarians and Christians and atheists and everybody. I think one of the themes that you'll find kind of woven its way all through the book, is kind of how silly all this is, and how how outsized it has become for a lot of us in our minds, in our worries, and our fears, and the way we treat other people, with contempt and hatred over their politics, the way we fear and despise our neighbors. I think everyone, no matter what their politics is, everyone is guilty of that to some extent, especially in this day and age. And so I think a lot of it was, us kind of reminding ourselves of the fact that, this we are very blessed to have been born in America. It was a huge grace that we were born here, that we were born free. Yes, we should try to protect it. Will it last? Probably not. And you kind of have to you have to remind yourself that our hope is elsewhere.
Yeah.
We are citizens of a different kingdom. We serve a king that is higher than the president, and when you have that perspective, hopefully you can relax a little bit and be like, okay, I'm going to vote. I'm going to do my duty as a citizen. But what is most important is for me to love my neighbor and to love my family who vehemently disagrees with everything that I believe, and to continue to work to build the kingdom of God, even as the kingdom of America, or the empire of America, seems to be crumbling right before our eyes. We do have this promise from God that He will build His church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it, regardless of what is happening in politics. And a lot of that, we're called the Babylon Bee. I mean, that comes from the Babylonian exile, where Israel was, pulled out of their homeland. The temple was ransacked. They're exiles now in what was the greatest empire on earth. And Daniel saw Babylon fall. He saw the greatest empire on earth fall. And then we have the additional perspective that even Daniel didn't have. We saw what God was doing through all that, what He was doing with Israel, and ultimately leading up to Christ. And when you kind of have that 5,000-foot view of history, you can kind of go, okay, like this corruption is kind of funny, like these politicians are kind of ridiculous. We're all kind of ridiculous, we can relax and laugh at this a little bit,
Yeah, no, I found probably the most challenging chapter in the book along that lines was I want to make sure I get the title right when I say it: Destroying Your Political Opponent's Stupid Faces. Because we can talk to people in such cruel ways when we get into political disagreements, and this just sort of highlights the way that people talk and interact, and I think should probably be convicting to a lot of believers that when we get into political realm, when we put our political hat on, we end up acting very un-Christ-like. And I think you're trying to bring that out in the book, that we should not be destroying our political opponents' stupid faces. We should be kind, even if
unless they're just really stupid and they just deserve it. Yeah.
And sometimes I guess you just you got to do what you got to do. I think that might be in one of Paul's letters.
Yeah, and again, I'll say it again, that I say this as probably the worst offender. I try to be I try to be good on Twitter, but Twitter is just like Twitter's Twitter, and oftentimes I let my flesh get the best of me, and I get caught up in the I need a good clap. I need a good clap back. I need a good comeback. I need to shut this guy down. And it's I think a lot of it was kind of preaching to ourselves, for sure.
No, that was one of the things I found interesting about this book, because obviously wokeness was all making fun of the woke, which is honestly easy to do because it's almost like its own satire.
Yeah.
But in this book, what I found kind of intriguing is that, like, the first, how long into the book, I would say Probably the introduction on democracy is God's favorite form of government, and the origin story of the American democracy. Like, that's almost more poking at the right than it is poking at the left, because it's the right who loves George Washington and, all of that American Revolution stuff, and making fun of it would be more along the line of what the left would do than what the right would do. And do you think you're going to find anybody from the left who reads this book and they're like, I'm glad for it because of all the times it made fun of the right? Do you think we're going to get that response at all from this book?
I hope so. That would be great. I would love that. But I'm not counting on it for sure. That's if there's one thing I've learned is that we can always count on the left to I think initially when the Babylon Bee first started getting really popular, the left was freaking out about it. And, New York Times was doing stories about us. And I think that backfired to the point where they were like, maybe it would be better if we just ignored these guys. We're adding fuel to the fire. So we'll see though. Maybe what I encourage people to do is, buy an extra copy of the book and leave it like a tract, like at the bus station,
as a tract.
For your waitress, and maybe a leftist will find it and it'll change their life.
Well, because there's a huge section like in the book where, I shouldn't say a section, but lots of places where it has the right on one column and the left on the other. Like when you made fun of Thanksgiving dinners. One of the pages is making fun of Thanksgiving dinners. And so you had the right way, how to ruin your conservative relative's Thanksgiving dinner, and then how to ruin your progressive family's Thanksgiving dinner. And so you're sort of poking at both of those there. And it's should be funny from both sides because you're hitting both sides of the aisle, but I don't know if the left can take the jokes as well.
We'll see it. Well, I have, the Thanksgiving dinner, I think is something that'll hit home for a lot of people. I have family. I'm part of a big family. I have family members who are hardcore leftists and, who just despise everything I stand for.
They know what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I get angry texts and letters from them too. And then we have to get together for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. And so I think that's a lot of families these days. And I think one thing that it's important to keep in mind is that no political opinion, no philosophy or political opinion is worth alienating or failing to show love to your own family.
Yeah. I agree.
Never if the bridge is going to be burned, make the other person do it, always, and then always be ready to rebuild it when they're ready. The political climate over the last 4 years has split so many families and ruined so many friendships. And I think as Christians, and conservatives, we're going to have to be the people who are ready to, rebuild those bridges with open arms. And I think pretty much everybody has at least one person they can think of that they, either a relationship or friendship they've lost in these last 4 years. So definitely relatable and hopefully something we can all laugh about for sure.
Yeah, no. So when I was reading through this book myself, my favorite moment was when I just left the book lying on the kitchen table and my 10-year-old son picks it up and he reads through, probably about 40 pages of it. But he gets through the forms of government that are in the book. So the Guide to Democracy has several optional forms of government. Communism, the glorious utopia where the workers own the means of production. Socialism, the glorious utopia where you get to take most of your neighbor's money and use it for yourself. Democratic socialism, the utopia where you get to vote to take your neighbor's income for yourself. The glorious galactic empire, the empire from Star Wars. The beocracy, where we're ruled by bees. Theocracy, ruled by God. Monarchy, ruled by the king. Anarchy, ruled by no one. And then they get crazy on the next page. Plutocracy, which is ruled by the rich, which is Jeff Bezos. Corporatocracy, which is ruled by the corporations. Aristocracy, which is ruled by the nobles. The reign of Kiwazak Hardek. I don't know, what book is this from?
Dune.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
so that's from Dune. I thought it
Yeah.
might have been, but I wasn't 100% sure. I've seen the first movie, but I didn't read the
We're
book.
we're a bunch of nerds at the Babylon Bee. Yep.
Obviously. The rightful rule of the God King, Emperor of mankind, and then the rule of the dark saber. And so my son reads through those pages and he comes to me and he said, Dad, I have a favorite form of government. I expected him to go with Star Wars and the rule of the dark saber, but he says, no, Dad, my favorite form of government is plutocracy because I love getting Amazon packages in the mail. So he wants Jeff Bezos as his president and his ruler. So,
Oh boy.
So Joel, do you have a favorite form of government if you're going to pick one on those 2 pages?
Yeah, I would have to say rule by dark saber sounds pretty awesome about now. It's fair.
It's
Whoever can get the dark saber is the ruler. Like, you don't have to worry about, elections being rigged, or like, votes being miscounted, or ballot dumps, or anything like that. It's just cut and dry. We have one televised event, and we have like some kind of gladiatorial battle to the death between Trump and Hillary to see who can get the dark saber. And everyone's like, okay, well, I don't agree with it, but Trump got the dark saber, so what can you say? We all saw it, I think that would be great.
All right, we'll take it. Rain. Joel Berry is now supportive of rule by dark saber.
Yep. Put it in quotes.
I like it. Well, that'll be the headline of the interview. Why you should support rule by dark saber. And then I'll get comments if I put that as the headline of people being like, "Oh no, they're supporting Disney Plus. The Babylon Bee's gone woke."
Well, I say that only because we all know that eventually this world is headed for a perfect theocracy under the reign of Christ, and there will be no one will have anything to say about it. And so, knowing that, we can kind of play with these other ideas, but we know the ending. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, which is a good place to be. So we're hurtling closer to the next election. Do you have any advice that you would give to anybody as we approach the next election day? Because I'm going to assume that the temperature on all of the political rhetoric is going to go up about 100 degrees.
Yes.
It's going to get all the more crazy.
Yes.
And got any advice as we enter that insanity?
Well, yeah, I think the most important thing we should remember is that this is the most important election of your lifetime, maybe the most important election since the origin of the universe. I mean, it all ends or begins or ends here. Like, if it does not go your way in November, the world is over. Like, there is no hope. So you have to get out and vote. The other thing too, I'll say to my conservative brethren is don't do any like MAGA terrorism between now and then. I know Biden really is hoping that a MAGA person does something crazy. But you just gotta be self-control. I know you really want to do terrorism right now, but you gotta hold back.
So hold off on the terrorism till
hold off on the
December.
terrorism. That's right.
Wait till we get the results. Yeah.
And don't talk to any FBI agents. If someone DMs you on Facebook and says, "Hey, we need to do something about we need to go to our FBI office and spray paint the front." No, don't. No, that's an FBI agent. Yeah. He's baiting you. Just pray and vote. What else can you do? I think the getting involved at the local level is very underrated. We think nationally a lot of times, and we don't think locally as often as we should. Get involved locally. If you have time on your hands, organize, but vote and pray and give it to God.
That's good advice. Vote and pray and give it to God, and don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. That's yes, very good. Don't be a jerk. Leave that to the Babylon Bee. We'll punch down and engage in hate speech and incendiary rhetoric all on your behalf.
Because that's what this all is. It's all hate speech and incendiary rhetoric. Except for the spots that are making fun of the right, then those are okay.
Those are okay. Yeah. Those are punching up.
Yeah. Because the right's always up and the left's always down. No matter who has the money, no matter who has control, the right is always the ones who are up. So that's right. It's good advice to keep in mind. So if you haven't gotten a copy of the Babylon Bee Guide to Democracy, I would encourage you to pick one up. I enjoyed it throughout. I found it to be funny. There were just a whole bunch of places where I was laughing and my wife had to be like, "So what are you reading about this time?" And so I had to show her another joke that was in there, and we thought it was great and enjoyable. And I do think it's the ideal coffee table book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And it's a good way to kind of bridge those political discussions with family. When you all come around for Thanksgiving. This book is sitting on the coffee table. Um, Everyone should be able to find something to laugh about. If you have this as a Christmas gift or you have it on the table at Thanksgiving, this isn't a book that will necessarily anger your leftist family members. So
Well, yeah, because if it's on the coffee table, someone will pick it up and start thumbing through it. And the
Right.
best part about it is it'll give stuff for people to talk about. Because at
Exactly.
some point you're going to find something that's in there where you're going to say, and some of it could just be that random humor, like favorite forms of government that are just, thought up by the bee, and or this page was also great. The most notorious judges. I loved the best part was number 8 with I thought was Amy Coney Barrett's has adopted 7 more kids, not pictured in here since it went to print. And that's her notorious thing, is that she keeps, how dare she adopt all these children.
What? One of my favorite parts of this book was at the end of this each chapter. This is something we didn't do for the wokeness book, but at the end of each chapter, we have a chapter review with review questions, almost like it's like a Bible study or something. And so like at the end of, for example, we just talked about the chapter destroying your enemies, your political opponent's stupid faces. So at the end, you'll have some review questions. So question 1, whom do you wish to destroy? Write their name below. 2, question 2, what method would you use to destroy them? Please be detailed. Like it's just like, I don't know, having grown up in the church and done countless Bible studies with little, review questions at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I like the idea of, if democracy is a religion to people, and they're treating it as a religion, we should at least have some religious style review questions at the end of each chapter. So I enjoyed those a lot.
No, it was great in joke, because you get the joke if you've been to any church Bible study, if you walk through any of those, Bible study books on any book of the Bible, like where those questions are coming from, and so you get all that, and so it's great. And then at the same time, these are ideal icebreaker questions. Like if you need something to talk about in that awkward family meal, some of them are things that should get everybody laughing and everybody involved. So there's a lot good that's in this book. As I said in my review, it looks really good. And so the one thing that I did emphasize then that I want to bring up again is that I read the Guide to Wokeness on Kindle. Like I had the digital version. I was reading on my phone. It is much better on paper. This is one of those books that very rarely am I like, you want the paper version of it. For the most part, I'm a digital. I want it easy to transport, but this is a book where you want to look at it. It's
definitely
well. It looks good.
And one thing I will say too is if you want an additional laugh, get the audiobook version, because then you get to hear the narrator struggling to describe what he's seeing on each page in the pictures.
There's really an audio version of this book?
There's actually an audio. You can get it on Audible. The narrators, and this is the publisher. The publisher commissioned this. I don't know who they did it with, but he's reading through the book, and then he'll come to a picture, and then he has to describe what's in the picture, and it's really hilarious. But I definitely recommend the print version for sure.
So well, I mean, just to make sure, like when it comes to like the 8th Amendment on no cruel or unusual punishment, it says this means you cannot be punished by bees by having a mask forced over your head while your cultists pour bees in, and then the person saying not the bees, not the bees. So then the person will say, pictured above the 8th Amendment is
Nicolas Cage with his head in a cage, yeah.
All right. So additional humor there in the audio version. I didn't even expect you guys to have an audio version of this book, but
yeah, it's bizarre.
So yeah, no, it would work though. So no, again, so we'll just want to remind everybody again, this is the Guide to Democracy by the Babylon Bee. Great book. Thank you to Kyle and Joel and whoever else on the team was putting this together. I appreciate it. And if this is your first time watching Rev Reads and you're new to the channel, I would love for you to subscribe to this video, like it, share it, get more word out on the Guide to Democracy. We want more people to know about this book, read it, get more sales out, because obviously, as Joel said, they're getting killed by algorithms and getting censored, and funds that they should naturally be having come in for their content, they're getting cut out from. So if you want to support the Babylon Bee and what they're doing, support them by buying their book, purchasing that, and getting it out there. So thank you so much, Joel, for your time and for being on the channel.
Thanks, Shawn. Appreciate you having me.